So right now, somewhere in the U.S., there's a delivery driver stepping out of an air-conditioned truck.
Right, into like 105-degree heat.
Exactly. Just to hand you a package exactly on time. And at the exact same moment, there's a tech company on the other side of the world trying to buy up a small city's worth of electricity.
Just to train a new AI model. Yeah.
Right. And, somewhere else entirely, a massive cargo ship is just sitting idle outside the Strait of Hormuz.
Which, on the surface, those sound like totally different headlines, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got weather, you've got technology, and then geopolitics. But if you actually look closely, they are all the exact same story.
It really is, it's a massive shift in perspective. Because we're so trained to read the news in these neat little categories.
Oh, for sure. We put, stock market jitters in the finance bucket, and military tensions go in the geopolitics bucket, and heat waves are just, well, the climate bucket.
Right? But treating them as these isolated events, it fundamentally hides the actual mechanics of what's happening across the globe right now.
And pulling back the curtain on those mechanics is basically the mission of our deep dive today. So we're unpacking this really fascinating analytical framework from it's the MGF TGF weekly report, week 30.
Yeah, and we should clarify right away, we're not here to give you some doom and gloom warning about an imminent global collapse or something.
No, definitely not. Instead, we're going to show you how AI, global shipping, and extreme heat are secretly these connected parts of a single shared resource field.
Because the world is beginning to fundamentally redesign its daily operations around this new kind of invisible pressure.
Right. And to map out that redesign, the Week 30 report relies on this specific observational lens. It's called the membrane gradient field, or MGF.
And it's important to point out that MGF is not like some crisis detection model. It's just a way of observing what's pressing on the world.
Pressing on the world and where that pressure is changing the shape of things, right?
Exactly. It's about where the deformation is happening.
Let's break that name down a bit, though, because membrane gradient field, I mean, that sounds intensely academic.
It does sound a bit heavy, yeah.
But when I think of a membrane, I usually think of biology, right? Like a boundary, the thin layer where two completely different environments actually touch.
That is honestly the perfect way to visualize it. You just think of the membrane as this friction point where two different realities are scraping against each other.
Okay, scraping against each other.
Right. So MGF observes the forces pressing against those boundaries, the deformation that happens, and these really profound incompatibilities between, say, a global decision and a local condition.
Okay, so let's actually look at a real-world membrane right now. Let's start with, the loudest topic on the planet, which is AI.
Oh, yeah. The absolute loudest.
Because we usually think of artificial intelligence as this weightless, invisible software ghost in the machine. It's algorithms, it's the cloud, it's just code.
Right. But looking at it through this MGF lens, it completely flips that narrative on its head.
Because it's not weightless at all, is it?
Not even a little bit. The report makes it very clear that AI competition is no longer just a software race or like a battle over model performance. It is transformed into a massive, highly physical resource grab.
A resource grab. So walk me through that chain of dependencies, because the report maps this out, and it creates a very grounded picture.
Yeah, so it starts with computing capacity, right? Which relies entirely on advanced semiconductors and memory.
The physical chips.
Exactly, the physical chips. And those chips rely on astronomical amounts of electricity, water, and land just to operate and stay cool.
And securing all those local physical resources, that takes, what, enormous financial valuation?
Tons of capital, yeah. And ultimately protecting that entire stack becomes a matter of national security.
Wow. So it's a literal supply chain of pressure. Like the software ghost needs a massive physical body to actually survive.
It really does. And that physical body is incredibly demanding. Like, the report highlights this specific observation from week 30. NVIDIA and South Korea's SK Group announced a plan involving over $500 billion.
$500 billion. Just pause on that.
Right. And they aren't just writing new code with that money. This initiative involves building 2-gigawatt AI data centers.
Wait, 2 gigawatts?
Yeah. And advancing next-generation HBM4 memory along with this new Vera Rubin architecture.
Okay, let's pause on those technical terms for a second, because I think this is where the physical reality really bites, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So HBM4, high bandwidth memory, is essentially about stacking silicon chips vertically to get more performance out of them.
Right, you're packing them as tightly as possible.
But when you stack chips like, I don't know, miniature skyscrapers, They generate an immense amount of localized heat. You literally hit the thermal limits of silicon.
Which means they'll melt if you aren't careful.
Exactly. So to keep them from melting down, you need these massive liquid cooling systems.
Which requires water. Vast, vast amounts of water.
Right.
And when we talk about a 2-gigawatt data center to house all of this, we really need to put that number in perspective.
Please do. Cause 2 gigawatts just sounds like a Back to the Future reference to me.
Right, the 1.21 gigawatts.
Right.
But in reality, 2 gigawatts is roughly the power consumption of an entire major city.
A whole city for one data center project.
Exactly. So this $500 billion investment, it's forcibly binding together power generation, telecommunications, local water rights, and national industrial policy.
Which, okay, that brings up a very practical question that I feel like the stock market seems to be agonizing over recently. Who is actually paying for all of this?
Yeah, the market jitters we've seen lately, they are deeply tied to this physical reality.
Because the market is finally waking up to the cost of the physical body.
Precisely. The expectation for AI growth, I mean, that hasn't disappeared, but the evaluation criteria have drastically changed.
Just so.
Well, investors are shifting from looking purely at the scale of capital being poured in to demanding a really clear timeline for profitability.
Like a return on investment.
Right. They're looking at these city-sized power requirements, and they're asking, how long until this physical infrastructure actually turns a profit?
They want to know when the ghost's new body is going to start paying rent.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
And building a 2-gigawatt power grid, I mean, that takes a remarkably long time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Decades sometimes.
Which, that lag feels like it points directly to another core concept in the report.
It points directly to velocity mismatch. This is just a crucial concept within the MGF framework.
Velocity mismatch. Okay, so unpack that for us.
Sure. So velocity mismatch basically describes the friction that gets created when systems that operate at vastly different speeds are forced to interact with each other.
Okay.
So with AI, you have global capital and financial markets, right? That's the fast layer.
Yeah.
Billions of dollars can be allocated with a single keystroke.
Right, those decisions happen at the speed of light.
But you can't just build a nuclear power plant or, lay thousands of miles of high-voltage copper wiring with a keystroke.
Right, the physical reality, the slow layer, it just cannot match that speed.
Not even close.
It kind of reminds me of trying to force a fire hose volume of water through a standard backyard garden hose.
Yes.
Like, the volume is there, the pressure is massive, but the physical constraints of the garden hose mean the water just backs up. It creates this immense pressure right at the connection point.
And that connection point is the membrane. That's exactly it. You have highly rational, lightning-fast global investment colliding head-on with local physical limits.
Limits like building the grid, getting permits.
Right. Securing local water rights, getting community consent. I mean, these processes move at a glacial pace compared to financial markets.
So that collision is the velocity mismatch.
Exactly. The pressure builds up simply because the fast system cannot force the slow system to move any faster than it physically can.
Okay, let's take this fire hose and garden hose analogy outside of the tech world for a second. Because the report applies this exact same structural observation to global logistics too, right? Specifically the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, the structure of the problem is identical, even though we're swapping out data centers for cargo ships.
Right.
So in the Strait of Hormuz, you have geopolitical and military tensions. The fast layer here consists of, military strikes and political statements.
Which can change instantly.
Exactly. A government or an armed group can just declare a pause in attacks almost instantaneously.
But wait, if there's a pause in military attacks, like there was during the observation window of this specific report, why wouldn't shipping companies just instantly send their cargo vessels back through the strait?
Right, you'd think they would.
Yeah, shouldn't the global supply chain just snap back to normal within a day or two?
The physical threat is paused, right?
That is the logical assumption, yeah, if you only look at the fast layer. But it completely ignores the slow layer of maritime logistics.
The garden hose.
Right. Because stopping a missile attack doesn't instantly restore a shipping lane. To resume normal operations, actuaries need to rebuild entire risk models just to renegotiate maritime insurance. Oh, wow. I didn't even think about the insurance side of it.
Yeah, and you have to guarantee crew safety, which involves renegotiating union contracts and war zone pay clauses.
So it's all this hidden paperwork and logistics.
Tons of it. Plus, the ships that were diverted around Africa, they are physically thousands of miles out of position, which means port operations on the other end are completely desynchronized.
Ah, okay. So The fire hose of global trade is technically turned back on, but the garden hose of logistics is still totally tangled up.
Exactly. All of that administrative and physical realignment, it takes months. The pressure didn't just disappear because the shooting stopped.
It just moved.
Right. It simply moved from the military membrane to the insurance and logistics membrane.
So it moved from the front page headlines into the back office paperwork.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
Which brings us to this really haunting concept in the MGF framework, which is silence.
Yes, silence. So silence refers to the things that are happening right in front of us as a result of this pressure, but they aren't being publicly displayed or, tracked by standard metrics.
Give me an example in the AI space.
Well, in AI, the billions being invested, that is incredibly loud. The headlines are everywhere, but the silence surrounds the local consequences.
Like who actually pays for the power lines?
Exactly. There is total silence around who ultimately pays for the massive grid upgrades. Or, what happens to a rural community if an AI data center is just abandoned in 3 years because the cooling technology became obsolete.
Oh, right. The silent, localized risks of a global gold rush.
Exactly. And in global shipping, the silence is the unrecorded delay.
The logistics paperwork you mentioned.
Right. It's the sheer human and organizational friction involved in getting complex operations to resync. The pressure is being absorbed by middle managers, port workers, logistics coordinators, but that isn't generating a headline.
The system looks like it's functioning fine, but only because a massive amount of invisible labor is desperately holding it together in the background.
Exactly.
So if you have this fire hose of global pressure, whether it's AI demanding city-sized power grids or shipping getting tangled in insurance, and it's constantly hitting these slow physical bottlenecks, something has to give, right?
Nothing always gives.
The pressure is trapped. So how does the system keep from collapsing? Like, how do we actually react to this?
Well, this is where the report shifts from observing the pressure to observing the movement. It introduces the second framework, which is the TGF, or transition gradient field.
TGF. Okay, so if MGF shows us the friction and the pressure.
Then TGF tracks how a pressured world begins to actually move,
Yeah.
and crucially, what kind of movement it actually is.
Meaning how organizations and just everyday life alter their standard operating procedures to cope with all this.
Right. But the report is very careful to distinguish between different types of movement here. It makes it really clear that adaptation isn't always synonymous with progress.
Yeah, that stood out to me. Sometimes we aren't solving a problem, we're just contorting ourselves to live alongside it.
Exactly. We're tracking how exceptions to the rule slowly harden into the new standard operating procedures.
And the report categorizes these structural adaptations into 4 distinct patterns, right? Let's go through them. The first pattern is called an opening.
Right, an opening, meaning a genuinely new route, a new option, or a new operating possibility becomes available to deal with the pressure.
Okay, a new tool in the toolbox.
Yeah. A prime example from the Week 30 report is how society is dealing with extreme heat right now. In places like the U.S. South and the U.K., extreme heat is shifting from being treated as an exceptional weather event to just a daily baseline living condition.
It's no longer a crisis, it's just Tuesday.
Exactly. The environment has fundamentally changed, and the opening we're seeing is the public debate and the early implementation of cooling spaces as essential public infrastructure.
Like libraries or community centers becoming official cooling zones?
Right. We're also seeing serious discussions about shifting outdoor working hours, like for construction or agriculture, to strictly early morning or nighttime hours, just to avoid peak heat.
That makes intuitive sense. It's a new standard operating procedure being formed. An option that wasn't widely considered before is now open and getting formalized.
Right. That's an opening.
But let's bring this back to the AI power grid issue. Earlier, I asked who eventually pays for those 2-gigawatt data centers.
Yes, the $500 billion question.
Right. If a tech company needs the power of a small city, how does society adapt to that massive new draw on the electrical grid?
That adaptation falls into the second pattern, which is called redistribution.
Redistribution.
Right. This occurs when the original problem, in this case, the massive need for new electricity generation, it remains completely unsolved. But the burden of dealing with it is shifted to another actor, process, or location.
Okay, so it's basically the structural version of passing the buck.
Pretty much. Historically, when a region needs a grid upgrade, the cost is passed on to taxpayers or everyday consumers through utility rate hikes.
Yeah, our bills just go up.
Right. But the report notes a TGF redistribution happening right now. There is a growing push to make tech corporations pay for their own dedicated power grids and generation facilities.
Oh, okay.
So the burden of generating that 2 gigawatts of power is moving from the public sector and the taxpayer directly over to the corporate sector.
Honestly, on the surface, that sounds like a win for the public. Like the tech companies want the power they should pay to build the power plant, right?
It does sound good, yeah.
But wait, if corporations start building and operating their own private power grids, doesn't that just mean they gain exclusive control over the public water and the land required to run them?
You hit the nail on the head.
Because if you own the power plant, you essentially get first dibs on the physical resources of that community.
And that realization brings us directly to the third pattern of adaptation: closing or capture.
Capture. So we solve the funding problem, but we create a resource monopoly.
Exactly. This happens when a change is absorbed back into the existing power structure, and it ultimately narrows the options rather than expanding them.
Okay, so walk me through the capture in the AI example.
Sure. If a tech giant builds a dedicated power plant, it does relieve the immediate financial pressure on the public grid. That's the redistribution.
Right.
But the capture is that the corporation now holds long-term, exclusive access to local water tables and prime real estate. So the options for the local community actually narrow.
Wow.
The adaptation is absorbed back into a system that disproportionately benefits the actor with the most capital.
We see that dynamic with the shipping example too, don't we?
We absolutely do. So in the Strait of Hormuz, the immediate adaptation to the pressure of those attacks is to introduce temporary safety checks and naval escorts to protect commercial ships.
Right, which is an exception to the normal rules of free trade.
Exactly. But the capture risk there is that those temporary safety measures harden into permanent military control over a vital global trade route.
Oh, I see. What starts as a protective exception becomes a permanent narrowing of options for global shipping.
Yes, the old system captures the new reality.
Okay, which leaves us with the final pattern of adaptation discussed in the report. And honestly, this one feels the most relevant to the listener's everyday life. It's called compensation.
Compensation. Yeah, this is perhaps the most insidious of the 4 patterns
Yeah.
because it relies really heavily on the silence we discussed earlier.
Right, the invisible labor.
Exactly. Compensation happens when the formal system, the visible rules, the public budgets, the official delivery times, it does not change at all.
On paper, everything looks perfectly fine.
Right. But instead, another actor quietly absorbs the extra work, the financial cost, or the physical friction just to keep things looking normal.
Let's bring this directly back to the scenario we started the deep dive with, like the listener's reality.
The package delivery.
Right. You order a package online. It's the middle of a 105-degree heat wave. And despite the extreme weather, that package arrives on your doorstep exactly on time, just like it would on a beautiful 70-degree spring day.
Right. And when you look at that from the outside, you might think, wow, the global logistics system smoothly and brilliantly adapted to this climate pressure.
It worked perfectly.
But according to the TGF framework, the system didn't actually adapt its formal structure at all.
It's an illusion.
Total illusion. What looks like a resilient, smoothly functioning system is maintained purely by compensation. The formal delivery schedule, the algorithm dictating the route, none of that changed to accommodate the heat.
So what did change?
What changed is that a human delivery driver quietly absorbed the physical strain and the health risks of working in extreme, dangerous temperatures.
A local municipality absorbed the cost of repeated exception handling, right? Like having to repair warped asphalt from the heat.
Exactly. A frontline manager dealt with unrecorded rework and decision fatigue, just trying to keep their drivers safe without altering the corporate quotas.
Wow. So the visible system looks incredibly stable, but it's actually running on the exhausted backs of the people at the local level.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the overarching theme of the Week 30 report, this is the ultimate incompatibility between global decisions and local conditions.
The report highlights something called the cooling access gap, which I think is just a perfect, tangible example of this incompatibility. Let's unpack how a high-level policy decision collides with household reality here.
Sure. So as heat waves become standard, there is a lot of high-level policy discussion about mandating air conditioning in residential buildings.
Basically treating cooling as a fundamental human right now.
Right. So governments might pass a law stating, every apartment in this city must have an AC unit installed.
So the policy gets passed. The politicians hold a press conference, they declare the problem solved, and they point to the shiny new units installed on the walls. The formal system has spoken.
But here is the silent compensation. The mere physical presence of an air conditioning unit on a wall does not mean the resident can actually afford the electricity bill to turn it on,
Oh, man. Yeah.
especially when that local grid is being strained and electricity prices are surging, which, as we discussed, is driven in part by the global energy demands of things like massive AI data centers.
Wow. The macro level forces literally price the local resident out of the adaptation. Like the policy provides the machine, but the actual pressure, the financial costs of running that machine during a heat wave, that just gets returned right back to the individual household budget.
That is exactly it. The overarching lesson of the MGF framework is that pressure does not simply evaporate. It flows downhill.
It starts at the global macro level.
Right. AI companies grabbing resources, geopolitical blockades forming, climate baseline shifting. That pressure flows down through the incredibly fast systems of global finance and international policy.
Crashing right into the slow physical systems of local infrastructure.
And when the pressure cannot be resolved at the institutional level, it just continues to flow downward until it finally hits the local community, the household budget, or the frontline worker.
They are the final membrane.
They are the final shock absorber for the global system, yes.
Man, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. I mean, we've seen how AI data centers in South Korea, extreme heat waves baking the UK, and global shipping delays in the Middle East, they aren't just isolated stories to be filed away in separate folders in your brain.
Not at all. They are deeply intertwined parts of a shared physical resource field.
And they're all constrained by these massive velocity mismatches. Fast money and fast politics hitting the realities of slow concrete, slow infrastructure, and slow logistics.
And in real time, society is desperately trying to redesign its operations around these pressures.
Right. Sometimes we find a totally new way forward. But often we see redistributions of burden, the capture of public resources by private powers, and just a whole lot of invisible compensation by everyday people.
The essential takeaway from the Week 30 report is really this. The world is not successfully removing the pressure. We are not solving the overarching structural crises.
So what are we doing?
We are just redesigning our standard operating procedures to run with the pressure. We are baking the deformation into our daily lives.
It's a profound and frankly somewhat sobering shift in how to look at the world around you. It completely changes how you read the news.
I agree.
So the next time you see a quick fix implemented at your job or, a new convenient policy rolled out in your city, look a little closer at the membrane. Ask yourself, was the pressure actually solved? Or was the friction just quietly redistributed to someone else, maybe even to you?